Hey, Inspired Tribe, how's it going? Welcome to another Inspired Conversation. I'm Jean Nolan, and today we have another member of the wonderful Icke family, Gareth Icke, David Icke's son. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for having me.
Gareth, you wear many hats. You're a singer, you're a songwriter. I can really relate to that a lot. You're an author, and you're also the prominent face of the media platform Ickonic. I see a lot of you everywhere. But before we dive into all of that, I would like to start with a out there question like I did with your dad. So if it was the year 2060 and you'd be sitting together with your grandchildren and it'd say, Grandpa, what was the year 2022 like? What would be your answer?
The end of the beginning, I think. Here in the UK, they're announcing like the releasing of restrictions and stuff. I don't buy it personally. So a lot of people are feeling like it's the end of this whole nonsense. I don't feel like it is, but I do feel like maybe it's the end of the beginning of it, and we're actually getting to a point now where I think 2020 is going to be a real transitional year. You know, where towards the end of 2021, certainly here in the UK and in Europe, to be fair, the pushback really started moving, you know, and people that were in what I would think about the 80% category, which was something's up. I don't know what it is, but something's up. That huge, giant majority of people are now starting to move towards something is seriously up and we need to do something about it. And so that's what I think 2022 will be the year where there's some real momentum to really kind of push back against what we're facing at the minute.
Do you think that in this movement of, you know, whether you want to call it the freedom movement or truth movement, there are many voices that have been seeing, maybe not to the extent that you and your family have done it, but that have seen this coming, and they're also saying that pretty much we're now at this crossroads where those who want to see, want to hear, want to realize what's happening are, and those who can't or won't are simply won't be able to, no matter what happens. Do you feel the same way, or do you still feel that there is some room left? There are still people that can join the ranks of this awakening and that can propel this momentum? Or do you think, well, that's pretty much the group that we have right now?
No, I think there's some room. Definitely. I think there are certain people that they're gone, you know, it's done. And you could spend your life trying to persuade them otherwise, and you would fail miserably. And so with those sort of people, it's kind of like, look, that door is well and truly locked, mate. You're going to crack your head open trying to break it. It's a waste of time. But there's lots of other doors that I'm seeing coming over to our side. It's an interesting thing, actually, mate, because you never see anyone go the other way. I've noticed that. Even in 2 years, I've not seen a single person go, do you know what? I used to think this was a complete scam, but actually, no, I'm on the side of the government now. Like, that doesn't happen. It's a one-way movement coming from that side to our side a bit. And I think there's a lot more room for it, definitely.
But do you think that this understanding by a larger group now, that this is a scam might actually kind of have a contagious effect to these other topics, that they go, no, I'm not going to be scammed into the next crisis. Yeah. I can see it for what it is now.
100%. Because, you know, it's like anything. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You know, once you've walked in on someone naked in bed, you can't unsee that. You know, you can run out of the room and go, oh my God, I'm sorry, but you can't unsee it. You've seen it. It's done now. And it's very much like that, really. I think people are now learning to question more. You know, people that I've got friends of mine that are almost angry with themselves that they weren't questioning this in March 2020. Man, what was I doing? Like, oh, and so, you know, I can't see them being fooled again. That said, you know, the psychosis part of it has been kind of staggering to me as someone that previously was kind of speaking out against wars in the Middle East and things like that. So a lot of my friendship group and group of people that I would talk to, podcasts that I would go on, people that would come on my podcast, you know, talking about, you know, maybe the Israel-Palestine, the illegal war in Iraq, all these, you know, sort of things generally focused around that sort of part of the world. They bought COVID hook, line and sinker. Like they totally bought it. And some of them still do. Some have scurried back a little bit and gone, no, I didn't really believe it, and sort of tried to rewrite their own history a little bit. But a lot that are on the left of politics completely bought COVID, completely bought it. And that doesn't make any sense to me, because the left historically is the one that is generally supposed to be more questioning of authority, whereas now it's the most authoritarian.
Yeah, why is that? I mean, we see that
so
everywhere in the world. Why is that? I see myself and find myself, and I don't really buy into the left-right paradigm as it is. It's you know, two wings of the same bird. But we do see here in the United States, we do see a movement emerging out of what you might perceive as the right, that is very truth-oriented, very freedom-oriented. And I find myself really aligning with a lot of what they're saying. I don't think that the whole picture is quite there yet, but it's really emerging as, and it is quite surprising to all of us that this comes from that side, right? But you're describing the same in the UK, and our friends in other parts of Europe are saying the exact same thing. Do we have to rethink these, because we all have our judgments about this? Do we have to rethink that too and say, okay, maybe we need to, you know, put the boxes away and look at these people not as a designated group, but rather seeing what unites us is our quest for freedom, truth, and that right now, this is the most important thing. It isn't about 100%. The fine print, right? Right now, it's really about freedom. How do we bring these people together from all sides of the political and religious spectrum? How do we do that?
Well, unfortunately, it's kind of had to get to a point where it's had to get so bad before it can get better, which is gutting, because what would have been great is if in March 2020, everyone saw through it. And when the government said to the, you know, say business owners, we're all shutting you down, and the business owner said, no, you're not, it would have been done in 20 minutes. But unfortunately, it's had to get so bad that people are now, from both sides, to be fair, starting to see through it, and they are starting to join forces a little bit. I mean, it's not as kind of rapid as you'd like, but to go back to a little bit, you know, I'm the same as you. I don't go really down this left-right thing. Both, you said wings of the bird, both cheeks on the same arse, in my view, kind of thing. But it's like,
I just heard that one yet, so that's really refreshing. Yeah.
The way I look at it is, like, I'm not into politics really. You know, it's all like a pantomime to me. But what I think has happened a bit is, like, this Overton window has moved so far to the left that actually people that are now considered right actually they're not really. Like for me, for instance, when I was a kid growing up, I had long hair down here. I used to wear nail varnish, eyeliner, all that stuff. And I used to play ice hockey. And in my ice hockey team, they used to call me Swampy. Now, Swampy was a guy who was an eco warrior, right? And they tried to build this motorway, and there was no need to build this motorway, but they tried to build this freeway, this giant freeway, through this amazing countryside, and they literally bored through it and just destroyed it. They could have built tunnels underneath it. They didn't. They just smashed right through it. Anyway, so this guy basically dug holes and tunnels and lived in Twyford Down. It went on for years. He just lived underground for years, right? And he was known as Swampy. So I used to get called Swampy because that was what I was perceived to be. A lefty southern softy, right, is what they call you. Now, my outlook on life then is no different to my outlook on life now, which is you do you, hun. You do you. I'll do me, you do you. And as long as what we both do doesn't negatively impact other people, we're all right, aren't we? Job done. Shake hands, have a beer. That's my attitude now with everything. If you want to wear a mask, go wear it. You want to get jabbed, you get jabbed, mate. But I'm not. And so as long as you're happy with me not doing that, and I'm happy with you doing that, you do you. But now that attitude, I've been called far right. And I'm thinking, but I was Swampy a few years ago.
Isn't that the stamp, like it's a stamp, okay, if we can't pin anything else, we just boom, we just do that, and that way you're disqualified, right?
Yeah, exactly. But that's what's so strange is this so-called right in America. It's the same here, exactly the same here in the UK. That the people, even political parties that are fighting back against mandates and stuff like that, are from the right side, the more conservative side. You, they're basically fighting for freedom of choice. And so I think, but your freedom of choice it doesn't get much more liberal than that. If you take the definition of the word liberal, yet you've got people that call themselves liberals telling you that no, you can't have body autonomy. No, the state has to mandate what goes in your body. I mean, that's Twilight Zone stuff to me. What do you mean? Like, that's insane. Why are they doing that?
As you said before, you think certain people aren't, won't be able, or we won't be able to pick them up and save them or take them with us. What's going to happen to them, and what's going to happen to those of us who want to live a true, authentic life?
Well, unfortunately, it might come to a point where people, go their separate ways. How that plays out and manifests itself, I don't know whether you're going to have different communities of people. I know a lot of people in the UK have been, when things were getting really bad, and we're looking over at Australia, and to be fair, looking at Austria, and they were buying up land with the idea of actually, we'll just start again. Like, that's fine. And we'll grow our own food, and if we're going to be excluded from society, then we'll just have our own. It might well come to that eventually. I hope it doesn't, but it might well come to that. But the mass psychosis stuff, I don't know how to get through that with certain people, though. It's almost like I call them non-player characters. When you play a video game and people are just in the background on whatever video game you're playing, are sort of doing stuff, so they're animated, but there's no one controlling them. That you've got, I kind of feel like that about a portion of society now, where they are non-player characters. They are just literally going through the motions and just following almost like a software script, and you can't interact with them. There's certain people that I tried to early doors, have conversations with. You just cannot get through to them, and not so much to persuade them, but you can't even get them to engage or listen. They have no interest. They are completely blinkered and completely shut off from any idea other than the Rona narrative. And I don't know how to get beyond that, to be honest. As sad as that is, especially because a couple of them I actually know well, but it's, what can you do? And it's happening everywhere. I spoke to a doctor today, Dr. Graham Lyons, over in Australia, and he was saying he has that with his family. He's like, I'm the only one. He's like, I can't even talk to them, and they can't even talk to me. And it's just like, on that side, I'm lucky as hell. Like, I don't have that, that situation to lose your whole family. But a lot of people are, and it is a psychosis. It is because it's not based in any logic at all.
Something that, I've seen in my family. My wife and I, with 3 children that are now in their early adult years, but they grew up in a household with, truth seekers, freedom lovers, and critical thinkers. So on more occasions than I can count, I heard the phrase, "Dad, can you just be normal when we go out today, just for once? Just be like everyone else." And I could never grant them their request, simply because it's not who I am. But I can imagine, you growing up with David Icke as your father, that this might have happened on occasion. So how is that? I mean, that's definitely something that people wonder, how is it to grow up as David Icke's son?
It's a difficult one because I don't know any different. Do you know what I mean? It's the only experience I've got. But I think the biggest transition really was because, obviously, for as long as I can remember, he was famous because he was on telly. So he got recognized anyway, for as long as I can remember. So that didn't change. The difference was you went from basically being adored. And I mean, these are the years before selfies and camera phones and that sort of nonsense. So people would come up and ask for autographs or to shake his hand and stuff like that. So you never really got a lot of peace when you went out anyway as a family. And then suddenly, just overnight, that went from "we love you, man" to laughing and hating. Which as a kid, it was kind of quite a weird thing to sort of get your head around, because I was only like 8 or 9. So, old enough to sort of know what what's what in life a bit in terms of, when people don't like you. But in terms of the reason behind it and stuff, it was quite odd. And then obviously then the media got involved and they would follow me to school and things like that. So to the point where I couldn't walk to school anymore, I'd have to get a lift from my mum, which to this day, mate, I still don't understand in terms of what they were going to get out of it, in terms of the press. What were they getting out of it, out of an 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid? I still don't. I'm 40 years old now and I still don't understand what that was all about. But they would follow. And I remember going to, because I used to be a goalkeeper when I used to play football. And so I went to a goalkeeping school just outside London in the summer. And you were there for just under a week. And you were coached by, top-notch goalkeeping coaches and stuff. And there were just media everywhere. And I remember Bob Wilson, who used to play for Arsenal in Scotland, it was his goalkeeping school. He totally took me under his wing and was explaining to me that this media were just here because Pat Jennings, I think, was coming in to see the kids. It's like Pat Jennings has been retired like 30 odd years, but yeah, the media are here for him. And as a 9-year-old, I believed that. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. But they weren't. They were all there to try and get pictures of me, which again, I don't understand what they were going to get out of it. What's the point in that? Because my dad was outspoken, so you get pictures of his kid playing football. Media are weird to me, mate. But what it did is it toughens your skin and it prepares you for stuff. And so I know a lot of people say, I don't care what people think. And you're like, you do really, you say you don't, but actually you do. And I think I can probably list on one hand or two hands max how many people I give a shit about in terms of what they think of me. I care what my wife thinks of me. I care what my kids think of me. But in terms of the greater population, oh my God, have you seen so-and-so said I couldn't give a monkey's, mate. And I don't think, because I'm speaking my truth. And if you don't like it, that's absolutely fine, mate. You don't like it. That's fine. I'll see you later. But I don't know if I'd have that thick skin or that ability to almost be bulletproof to at least verbal attack if I hadn't gone through all that as a kid. So I kind of think now, I was actually having this conversation with Mark Devlin just a couple of hours ago. And we were saying, like, it's funny, these things happen to you when you're young that at the time are not very pleasant, really. And now I look at it now in terms of what we're here to do, in terms of fighting back against this tyranny. And I'm looking back and I'm thinking, mate, that was just my basic training.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's all that was. And so I embrace it in that sense. And because it feels like a battle. And that's what we're going into now. It's certainly a psychological war. That's for sure. And so all that stuff that went on was for a reason.
You said we're in a battle, and a lot of people don't want to hear that. It's especially when they're more spiritually minded, and we live a very, if you will, spiritual life. Although I think spirituality is only as as valuable as it is practical, as you actually live that. So whenever something's just theoretical and it sounds good or it looks good on paper, but you don't live it, it doesn't really have any value. But it does feel like with the beginning of this COVID era, and I don't even want to label it that, but let's do it. A war has really intensified. That was looming kind of under the surface, but now it's full out war here. And we have to be very innovative and even sophisticated in the ways that we answer that, right? Because it would be so easy to just resort to violence and just try to fight this out, which I think on part of the other side of the aggressor, that would be very much welcome, because that would be the fastest way to push everything down, right? So 100%. How do we stay in this battle? How do we stay peaceful, constructive, but also don't give up an inch? We've already given up inches. How do we do that? How do we maintain this line, this fine line of peaceful non-compliance, but at the same time not giving up an inch?
I think peaceful non-compliance is absolutely the answer. And it's been the answer from the beginning, because everything that they've taken, everything that they've done the last 2 years has come with the permission of the people. The people have allowed it. You know, I always say like that 3 weeks to flatten the curve, that was the biggest mistake people made, because when they gave the government 3 weeks, it made the government think it was theirs to take. And the fact is it's not theirs to take, and it never was. And so from now on, I think people need to draw a line, and that line has to be immovable. And you know, on a spiritual level, put that out there into the universe of like, no, this is my line. And it doesn't need to be aggressive either. I know the word battle has kind of like, you know, almost like charging with a sword, sort of aggressive connotation to it. But we go through battles every day. Mate, getting out of bed's a battle sometimes for me when the alarm goes off at 6. But we're having emotional battles every single day, and we're winning them. And it's a wonderful thing. Every challenge, you know, for me should be relished in a way. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just making you better. But I think, again, like I say, like people have this negative connotation with battle, but I feel that that's the point that we're at, where we can just put up a defense, which is, this is my line. We don't cross this line. That's it. And what people have done, if you kind of use, say, breaking and entering as an example, what people did with that 3 weeks to flatten the curve, and I think it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve for you guys over there, was they let these people in the front door. And so they just do it step by step by step. And what people need to do is just go, right, this is the line, this is my front door, and you're not passing it. And if you put that out into the universe, I tell you what, mate, like, as you, of course, you know this, but you can create that reality. Like, that would be the only thing I could say to people, was that if you feel very strongly that you don't want to do something, then don't do it. Simple as that. And just draw that line, and no one's passing this line. If you have enough people do that, there's nothing they can do. Literally nothing they can do, because they rely on your consent.
6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, at the end of this year, what do you think will happen in the political realm? Because I think we see a sort of a pattern all around the world. Something is really crumbling. What do you think is going to happen by the end of this year? And do you think we will have put this era behind us by then?
I'm quite an optimistic person, but I'm not sure by the end of 2022 we'll have this behind us. I think what we need to be kind of quite vigilant about is the fact that this is crumbling. And like you say, something's definitely going on. You can see it the world over. You look at places like Australia, and even Austria, to be fair, with the way that they're acting, those aren't the actions of people that feel they're in control. They are the aggressive, lashing out actions of a cornered rat. You know, like it's desperation. You just look at this Michael Gunner guy in Australia when he's talking to the camera, mate, he's about to start crying, I swear. Like they're having a breakdown. And so I think the old system is definitely crumbling, but what to be vigilant about is what's offered to replace it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
In terms of, you know, because you know, as an example, you know, you had the royal families of Europe, where you know the monarchy was abolished, but those people in those families just went off into positions of power in banking and positions of power in government and politics and stuff. So actually, and even in media, so actually nothing changed. They're still a royal family. They've just rebranded it, and so I think that's something to be wary of, because they will try and keep the same players and the same system of control, but rebranded so it looks like, oh, actually we won. And I think that's where a lot of this battle is. And that's actually what I should have said at the top of the show is for me, like the 2022 is the crossroads between the Great Reset and the Great Awakening. Mm-hmm. Like the two are almost going head to head now. And as more and more wake up to the existence of one of them, they're more likely to come over to the side of the Great Awakening. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that in 2022. But again, like I say, like a cornered rat or a petulant child that isn't allowed sweets at the counter, they're going to lash out. And so this year, I'm sure they'll try and, you know, pull out a few stops to bring back some fear into the population. Maybe terrorism might make a comeback. That's disappeared for 2 years, isn't it? Yeah. Suicide bombers are suddenly scared of a virus. It's weird. But yeah, so I think they'll throw some stuff at us this year. But like we said earlier, once you've seen through it, you can't unsee it. And so I think they're really going to struggle to get some things to stick, for sure. I mean, some people, like we said, like these non-player characters will follow it till the end. But I don't believe that you need 100%. Or even actually a majority of people. I mean, I know they say you need 3.5% of the population to start a revolution. So I think there's more than enough people awake already, and there's a lot more people that are awakening at the minute to forge a better life for ourselves, really.
Well, we're also imprinting on this field of informational field that is, beyond the physical, that is contagious. Once it reaches a certain mass, it is contagious. It is like the 100th monkey effect, that has been shown so often. What we have seen here, and I would love to get your take, on the UK and on Europe with that. What we've seen here in the US, and this is a very it's a very diverse field, but what we've seen over the past 2 years, especially, but even the years prior, during the Trump presidency, is that more and more people, everyday people, right? People that weren't inclined to go into any political positions before have begun to move into political positions or run for political office, whether that's local, small-time things, school boards or whatnot. And this has exponentially grown over the past 2 years, which I think is a very positive movement, because it's people that have, are bringing sort of common sense and a moral compass to a field that is so, that doesn't have any of that anymore. And, I think it's kind of counterintuitive for people like us to even consider that going into politics. But I do believe we need to change that too. You're right. We need to change the whole game of this, because it's like you said, it's been played by the same entities for so long. Do you also see a movement into politics by quote unquote good people, the common people? And the second part of that question, are we ever going to see an Icke run for office?
My brother might. I certainly won't be. Well, to be fair, my daughter might when she's grown up. She's already in charge in our house now, and she's only 3. But yeah, we are seeing that, to be honest. Yeah, there's quite a lot of parties, political parties have launched in the last 2 years. Just off the top of my head, the Heritage Party, the Reform Party, the Reclaim Party, that have all got a similar vibe about them, which is, old school values, family values, and some of them have quite a religious element to them as well. But they're started by just regular people, and people like the Reclaim Party, Lawrence Fox, who's an actor here and stuff. But the only issue that I see with those parties in terms of making a difference is they split the vote. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like if we could all join forces. Take Mayor of London, for instance. Last year, you had Sadiq Khan, dreadful man, and then you had the Conservative Party candidate, which I'm trying to remember his name now. But then beyond that, there was about 5 or 6, legitimate people that actually wanted what was best for London and actually wanted what was best for Londoners, and to had goodness in their heart, really. But when you looked at their votes, they were, pretty poor, really. And you think, but actually, if you'd have added them all together, you might not have won, but you would have certainly, made a dent, which you didn't make as individuals. And so I don't know why they didn't do that. Whether, I don't know if ego was part of it or not. I don't know them all well enough to be able to answer that. But I certainly think that the emergence of these new parties and people getting involved in local politics and stuff is a good thing. I'm not big into politics, but if you can have more sane voices in there and within it, then that can only be a good thing. I don't see how that can be a bad thing. But yeah, it would be nice for me to see them kind of join forces a little bit. I think they'd have a bit more impact if they did. But it's not for me personally.
That's so I hear that. So we're not going to have a Gareth Icke running for mayor or any other office. And I assume the same goes for your dad. I'm going to have you to ask your brother at some point.
No.
I want to close with a very important question. And thank you for your time, and thank you for your insight and all the work that you do on and off the Ickonic platform, which I think is fabulous and so important in this day and age. I read that you are very passionate about researching history and looking into the true past, because what we perceive as history is just a story that
Yeah.
some people made up the way they wanted to. But it is so, I think it is so tremendously important for us to understand who we are and where we're going, what our true potential is, by discovering what our true history is. What have you found? What do you think are the most eye-opening things that you have found on your quest for truth and history that that really changed your perspective and perception about who we are and where we're going?
Well, on a local level, it's funny because I did a series, or I've done 2 series called The Walk, and the whole idea of that was, 1, I like walking, and 2, I like history. So it was a case of walking through countryside in England, and then we did a series in Wales, talking to people about about folklore and legends and so-called myths and things like that, and going way back. And so what I found was really interesting was like the history of the Brits as a race of people, because we're taught here, certainly in schools, that there's no such thing. We're just a mongrel nation of lots of, and so there is no British people basically. And I was talking to a particular researcher, a guy called Ross Broadstock, who basically put together how hieroglyphics came from the Welsh language, and he'd written a book about it, and how actually you could, if you can understand Welsh, you can understand hieroglyphics. It kind of blew my mind a bit, really. But he was explaining about the history of the British people and how we go way, 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 way back, and how for him as an academic, suggesting that was an absolute no chance. They won't touch you. And so he was telling me how they'd found these remains in East Anglia, which they assumed would be Viking, because it's that would have been the coast that the Vikings came over. And he put in some research and found out actually these things were British, and they were made by British people, and these remains were of British people going way back, all this sort of stuff. And so he was chastised and given a lot of stick for it, but that was really interesting for me, to kind of look into the history of the British people as an Englishman, and the fact that what we're taught in school is just a fraction of what there is to know about our past. And in June this year, we're going to go up to Scotland to try and do exactly the same, try and get some historians there and try and kind of piece together how Britain worked. And I'm sure, these things are the same for everywhere, all over the world. The history that you learn about yourself is probably way, way off the actual history of your people, So I kind of, that was probably my biggest takeaway from those series, and doing research into that, was just how far we go back, as a group of people.
I question absolutely everything, and it's difficult enough to figure things out in the present realm often, and really get to the core of it. It's exponentially more difficult to do it for the past. So that's why I believe that if you can find, like, you go and you actually talk to people where knowledge and wisdom and folklore has been passed on from generation, I think that is the most accurate account of what you're going to find. As soon as it's written down, it's usually tainted, by an agenda in a certain coloring. Gareth, what is the best way for people to find you on a daily basis? I know you do a lot on Ickonic, and how do people sign up for it? And what do you guys offer on this amazing platform?
If you go to ickonic.com, which is ickonic.com, you can click subscribe and you get a 7-day free trial anyway. So you can check it out and see. We've got sort of a news and current affairs section now, where we do the Right Now show, which I present, and then we've got another show called Divine, which is more solution based. So you got Right Now, where I'm kind of, basically it's what's happening right now. So you're talking to people all over the world. Divine is more sort of sat down on the sofa, solution based. What can we do to fix this? Richard Willett, my good friend, he presents a show called Right Now Deep Dive, where he takes the guests that might have a 15-minute segment on Right Now show and talks to them for an hour, 2 hours, whatever, to really get deep into stuff. But then at the other end, we've got entertainment shows, stuff like The Walk, which is historical, but it's also kind of funny as well. There's some humor in there. I do a comedy podcast with Rich Willett called What Af, where we just basically look every week at what the actual fuck, like what is going on. This is just madness where, you know, if I don't laugh, I'm going to cry. So I'm going to laugh. And then there's, I mean, thousands of hours of films and documentaries and series on everything from cooking to ancient aliens to the paranormal. There's a whole paranormal section. So it covers everything really. What we found a lot within the alternative is there's very little humor, and there's very little light, which I understand completely, because if you're trying to expose darkness, then there's going to be a lot of darkness. But at the same time, we thought, you know, as much as we have documentaries on child trafficking and these horrific things, at the other end, we were like, we need some light. So we need some comedy. We need some, you know, people need to laugh and smile and actually accept that not everything is dreadful in the world, because if it is, what's the point? So it's really built in 2 years, you know, the channel, really built. And in terms of where to find me, for now I'm on Twitter, but I treat every day like it's my last with Twitter, because I've had final warnings. I've had 3 final warnings, so I don't know, I've got away with that. But I moved over to Getter. I got a bit of ear-roll grief about that. You know, it's a Trump platform. I don't think it is, and I don't really care, to be honest. If it allows me to speak freely and share information without censorship, then I don't care if it's Donald Duck's platform, to be honest with you. And so, yeah, just Gareth Icke on Getter, Gareth Icke on Twitter. And I try and share kind of news stories and things as I find them. And what I have found doing this is I get a lot of emails from people, whistleblowers that are within the police force, within the ambulance service, within the NHS, that let me know kind of what's happening, but they're not in a position yet to speak out because they'll lose their job, which is what I think the government is making a huge mistake here on April the 1st, saying that if you're not vaccinated, you're fired as an NHS. That goes for doctors, nurses, doesn't matter. So there's 100,000 of them at the minute, approximately. So that's 100,000 whistleblowers about to get thrown out into society. So I can't wait to hear, you know, some of their testimonies from the last 2 years. But a lot of these stories I get told by these people, I will put them on my social media, and obviously, you know, not give names away to get people in trouble. But yeah, whenever I'm finding stuff out, I'll always share it. So it's always worth having a look.
Gareth Icke, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for all the work you and your family do. This is not a job. This is a life invested in a greater cause, really, the cause, truth, freedom, and a bit better future. We're fathers. One day we'll be grandfathers. And so I know we share a vision of a future that is much brighter, much more peaceful and free than the present moment. So thank you for all you do. Everyone, please go to Ickonic.com, click on the subscribe button and check out what they're doing. Gareth is a big part of it. David is a big part of it. I know your brother is more in the background of things, but
he runs it. Jay runs it. He's the business brains. I'd bankrupt everything in a week.
So please go to Ickonic, check it out, and thank you once again for taking the time. Inspire Tribe, thank you for being here. Thank you for your support, your viewership. We love you all, and have an inspired, wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching. You can watch the full interview with Gareth Icke on our Rumble channel, where you will see the unedited, uncensored version of our conversation. So head on over to our Rumble channel. The link is right down here in the description, and watch the full interview.